Bit warm for a sweater, isn't it?
You know, we're talking about Mr. Rogers. If you talk about Mr. Rogers, you need to wear a sweater. Mr. Rogers was arguably one of the nicest men to have ever lived, and many who met him report that they were surprised to learn that his kindly demeanour wasn't an act he put on for his show. In addition to being fucking adorable, this also made Mr. Rogers insanely hard to interview because he'd never talk about himself.
So for people at home who don't know him, do you want to explain who Mr.
No,
Rogers is?
everyone knows who Mr. Rogers is.
Well, I actually don't know that much about Mr.
You can
Rogers.
fuck off, you know who Mr. Rogers is.
I know.
You're a human being, you know who Mr. Rogers is.
He was the host of a show, wasn't he?
Yeah, called Mr. fucking Rogers. Mr. Rogers' Neighbourhood. His name's in the title of the show.
I don't know. I never watched it.
Why have you not watched Mr. Rogers?
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Would you be mine?
I feel like I've offended you.
You have, because it's Mr. Goddamn Rogers. You know what? In the spirit of Mr. Rogers, I'm going to forgive you. Because that's what he'd want. Let's continue.
So I gather that Mr. Rogers was just a really, really nice guy.
The nicest guy, yes.
But isn't this just TV personality?
No, and a lot of people were actually shocked upon meeting him to learn that like the Mr. Rogers presented on the show was just what Mr. Rogers was like in his day-to-day life. Because obviously the Mr. Rogers presented on Mr. Rogers' Neighbourhood was like this omnibenevolent paragon of moral fortitude. And it's like, how can anyone be this nice? Mr. Rogers was that nice.
You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself.
Mr. Rogers was so nice that people who met him were often disarmed by his genuine and earnest attempts to get to know them as a human being, which eventually resulted in Mr. Rogers gaining a reputation as one of the hardest interviews in all of television.
So why did him being really nice make him really hard to interview?
Well, that's because, as I mentioned just then, Mr. Rogers would always make a concerted effort to get to know anyone he met, including interviewers. And this made him an absolute pain in the arse to try and interview because he'd never talk about himself and would instead make an effort to connect with the person interviewing him and talk about their lives, their dreams, their wants, their families, their pets, their kids, whatever. And obviously by the end of their allotted time, they had nothing to report on because they go, well, I learned to love myself again and, like, you know, I'm going to call my mother immediately after this, but I know nothing about Mr. Rogers. God damn it, I'm going to get fired. But it's okay. I love myself.
What efforts did Mr. Rogers go to get to know his interviewers?
One of the things a lot of people found confusing when they met him is that he'd always take photos of them together. And it's like, okay, this is a bit weird, but okay, Mr. Rogers, okay, let's pose for a selfie. Great, cool, can I continue the interview? Oh, you want to pose for another one wearing sweaters together? All right, fine. Oh, you want to show me like you know, the Kingdom of Make-Believe? Okay, let's take a photo of that. I've actually always wanted to see that. Let's do that. And they're like, okay, so I guess he's just taking photos for whatever reason. And then long after the interview, they'd get home and they'd get a package from Mr. Rogers. They'd open it up and inside would be a scrapbook of their time together, including a handwritten note from Mr. Rogers signed by him saying, I am glad to have met you. My day was made brighter by, like, you know, talking to you that day. Thank you. And like, oh.
It's such a good feeling to know that we're lifelong friends.
You're really walking a fine line there between adorable and a bit weird.
No, you're not. Mr. Rogers was not weird. He was just that genuine. Do not try and sully the name of Mr. Rogers, Brad. I will not have it. I will not stand for it. Because that was just an earnest attempt from a man who genuinely enjoyed meeting new people. I think there's a great example where he met a young lad in a wheelchair on one of his shows once.
It's a very fancy machine, but you're the one who makes it go.
Right.
And he's on the show and he's talking to him and he's just like putting him at ease. And I think years and years and years later at an awards ceremony, they say, oh, we've got a surprise for you, Mr. Rogers. And they bring that kid out, now a fully grown man, out onto the stage. And Mr. Rogers immediately bursts into tears and runs over to ask how he is.
I'm so glad to see you.
It's like he was not putting on an act. He genuinely enjoyed meeting these people. There's a story from one interviewer who went to meet him, and they said months later, I got a phone call, and it was Mr. Rogers. Like, hi? I said, oh, it's your birthday today, isn't it? Oh, it is. Thanks, Mr. Rogers. Because obviously he made a note of everyone's birthday and called them up on their birthday just to say hi, to see how they were doing. And he'd make follow-up calls for years after the fact just to see how they were doing and ask about things they talked about during their conversation to see if any problems they'd discussed with him would have been made better and things like that. And there's another story where I think a driver or something like that was dropping him off at an event. And he went, "So what do you do now?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going to wait out here for you, Mr. Rogers. Don't want to have fun." No. You come in with me. And took the driver into the event with him and then went home with him, had dinner with his family or something like that. And then again, months and years later, started sending gifts to him for his birthday and for his children and things like that. That's just how nice he was. That's the kind of shit he did.
Is there even anyone who compares nowadays with that level of niceness?
No one. I think if him and Bob Ross would have met in a room, just the entire world would have turned in candy floss and just blown away into the ether.
Until then, from all of us here, I'd like to wish you happy painting. And God bless, my friend.
Everyone who met him just says he just had one of those personalities where when he spoke to you as if you were the only person in the world. And he just had this genuine sincerity to him that you couldn't help but want to tell him everything and hug him and "You're my new granddad," and he loved it.
You know those memes where it's I wish somebody would look at me the way someone looks at this.
Yeah.
It's I wish someone would look at me the way Mr. Rogers looks at everybody.
Well, no, that's the meme, isn't it? It's if you want to make someone feel bad, just tell them you're not being the person Mr. Rogers thought you could be. Oh. Because obviously he believed in the inherent goodness in everybody. So if you see someone being an asshole, it's you're not being the person Mr. Rogers thinks you can be. It's loads of other adorable stuff he did, his own office. He just had a big comfy sofa in it. And people walked in and they'd sit on the sofa and Mr. Rogers would sit next to them because he didn't believe in having a desk. He didn't want a barrier between him and anyone he spoke to. And he was a vegan. And people asked him, "So why are you a vegan?" And he just looked him dead in the eye and said, "I couldn't eat anything that has a mother." And it's "Oh, Mr. Rogers, stop now!" I feel bad. I had bacon yesterday. I feel like a prick. And that's the thing though as well, because when people said that to him, and it's "Oh no, but I eat meat," and he goes, "Well, that's your choice. I love you anyway." And it's "Oh no, you're too good for this world."
I like you just the way you are. And what's more, I'm so grateful to you.
Perhaps the most unbelievable thing about Mr. Rogers that probably cements how nice a guy he was is that he reportedly responded to literally every single piece of fan mail he ever received by hand.
Nobody's got enough time to do that.
Mr. Rogers did. He used to set aside a couple of hours every single morning to respond to every piece of fan mail he got. I think it's also reported that eventually he did get email, but what he'd do is he'd get the email, read it out, and then respond by a handwritten letter if you didn't think email felt, personal enough. So that's
Every piece of fan mail.
Every single piece of fan mail, yes. And I believe there are when this report came up, that can't be true. So they tried to put a search out. Did anyone ever write Mr. Rogers a letter and not get a response? And it's no, everyone did. Every single person they found yeah, I got a response. I wrote a letter to him when I was 5 years old. It said, "I like you," or some shit like that. And he sent a full page response back saying, "You're a good person. You live your best life." It's "Oh no, I can't even respond to the fucking tweets I get half the time." And Mr. Rogers is there full handwritten letters to every single person who emails him. And he's making full scrapbooks for every random person he meets on the street. Holy crap.
Let people know that each one of us is precious. Let everybody know that we have value in this life.
There's got to have been a time where he got angry.
There's only one example I know of where Mr. Rogers lost his temper, or at the very least, got slightly less kind than usual. And that's when, in the mid-90s, Burger King created a parody of the character of Mr. Rogers called Mr. Rodney for an ad. And he got really annoyed about that because obviously he didn't advertise stuff to children. I think the only thing he ever advertised were non-profit charities aimed at education and child well-being. And he was "No, I'm not happy with Burger King using my likeness to sell burgers to children."
Did he not enjoy parodies of himself then?
It's not that he didn't enjoy parodies of himself, he just didn't like people trying to use his likeness or image to sell things to children. I think a good example of the fact that he didn't mind being parodied was when Eddie Murphy for an SNL skit did Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, which is a tough talking version of Mr. Rogers, like, you know, in the hood.
I've always wanted to live in a house like yours, my friend. Maybe when there's nobody home, I'll break in.
And apparently Mr. Rogers found that hilarious, and he had no problem with it, obviously, because it aired late at night when children wouldn't see it. Yeah. There's a story from Eddie Murphy where he says, I was in my changing room one evening, and there was a knock on the door, and it was Mr. Rogers. And he just called to him and said, I really enjoyed, you know, your parody of my work. Keep it up. You're a good man. And then walked out. If anyone was currently thinking after hearing all of that, Mr. Rogers can't have been that nice. Some of it must have been an act. There's only really one response to that, and I'm going to let Mr. Rogers take care of it for me.
Here I am, here I am.
Sounds like if God walked the earth, he'd be Mr. Rogers.
No, he would not. That's too good a compliment for God. All the stuff God did in the Bible, man, he's an asshole. Mr. Rogers wouldn't have made Job kill one of his children. Mr. Rogers wouldn't have, like, you know, killed all the non-believers, and, like, he wouldn't have, like, burnt Sodom and Gomorrah to the ground. Mr. Rogers would have been like, you do you. You do you. You're okay. That's too good. It's too good for God. I don't even think he's in. I think he's in, like, VIP heaven. And, like, he goes to ultra heaven, and the God's outside, like, oh, I get in, I know that guy. Mr. Rogers is there, like, no. So who do you think deserves to go to ultra heaven? So I'm up there, like, Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers, Steve Irwin, straight away. Jackie Chan's already got his place, like, sorted. He's already on the list, he's Jackie Chan. They're just waiting for him. Like, as soon as he, shuffles off his mortal coil, he's going straight in. He goes straight to the front of the fucking queue of, like, for ultra heaven. Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart's got his place in ultra heaven sorted already, hasn't he?
It's got to be Ian McKellen as well.
Oh yeah, well they've got
Christopher Lee's up there.
Oh, Christopher, already in there. Yeah. What do you think? He does the announcements. Of course he fucking does.
Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman, he's probably in ultra heaven, yeah. He deserves to go ultra heaven. Well, Bowie.
Bowie, yeah.
Yeah, who's going to do all the music up there? Prince.
Prince up there as well.
Yeah, he turned purple when he arrived. Of course he
did. Freddie Mercury get in?
No, he's already there. He founded it. He founded ultra heaven. Who else, man? Who else deserves to go? I like the idea of ultra heaven. It's just a better version of heaven. It's like, it's like you're in like a nightclub, and it's like, yeah, there's the VIP room. It's like, oh, I want to go in there. All the girls are hotter in there. That's how it is, man. Who else goes to ultra heaven? Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep's going to ultra heaven straight away. So that great Onion headline, isn't it? I think after she criticised Donald Trump. It's like, the Onion headline was, unfortunately, Meryl Streep can't be judged by her peers because she doesn't have any. Because she's just so fucking good. Who else? Oh, man, Ultra Heaven sounds awesome. Lemmy. I know he wasn't the goodest egg.
Would you reckon Deck but not Ant?
Oh, yeah. Wait, I thought Ant was the good one.
No, Deck's the good one.
Is Ant the person who hit people with his car? Yeah, so Deck gets in until he does something wrong. But then...
Ant can earn his way back.
He can earn his way back, yeah, by not hitting people with his car. That's a good start, isn't it? Which one of the Spice Girls do you think are getting? Because I think it'd be funny if only one of them got in.
It's got to be Baby.
Baby Spice. What does she do now?
Emma Bunton.
Doesn't she do all the stuff like UNICEF and stuff? Yeah, she'd get in, but not Victoria Beckham. Because she's like only in it for like, you know, her own gain.
But David Beckham can go in.
He can go in. David Beckham's awesome.
He's a load of stuff for charity, so. Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford. Well, he's just angry enough. He'll get in through stubbornness. Like, they'll put him on the list just because he don't want to get in. It's like, he'll never die anyway. Harrison Ford can't die because the Grim Reaper can't catch him. It's like, come on, stop flying your helicopter everywhere, Harrison. I'll get you one of these days. His middle finger all the way. Going along. Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt should probably go. But maybe only his character, Andy Dwyer. Andy Dwyer gets to go. And Star-Lord. Potentially.
Chris Pratt, as long as he plays one of his characters.
Yeah, he's just got to stay in character the entire time he's there. Well, I know. David Attenborough. And he gets to go in there, and every animal as well in the world gets to go in. And every dog. Every single dog goes to Ultra Heaven. Do you know they say all dogs go to heaven? Now, fuck that. All dogs go to Ultra Heaven. It's like, because they are all good boys and girls. They all deserve to go in. Maybe several cats. Maybe a couple. Maybe like the ones who drag burning babies out of buildings. The rest can fuck off.
What about James Avery?
Oh, Uncle Phil. Yeah, he's going in there, but he's got to dress like Shredder the entire time. If he's not dressed like Shredder, he's not getting in. Costume party up in that bitch. He's got to do it. Yeah, James Avery gets in. So Carrie Fisher, obviously. Carrie Fisher's got to get in there. And I'm assuming by that logic, like Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill both got to go. Because you got to separate him, kind of. That's a bit mean, isn't it? Maybe not the guy who plays Chewbacca. I've heard he charges for autographs, so you can fuck off with that.
Can people who go to regular heaven earn their way into Ultra Heaven from heaven?
No.
So once you've made the decision on Earth, you can't get any like.
Well, yeah, because obviously you've got infinite time in heaven.
Yeah.
So you could technically do it, but when you've only got like a finite amount of time on Earth, if you use that finite amount of time doing good and improving like the net happiness of the universe, then yeah, you get to ultra heaven.
What if you go ultra heaven, but someone like someone you love goes to normal heaven, then you're separated forever?
Oh no.
There's got to be rules.
Well,
for
they can come out to a smoking area and talk to you.
The smoking area for heaven.
You can't die, can you? We got to worry about, oh no, angel cancer.
I suppose people in a VIP area are allowed to leave, aren't they?
Yeah,
so
they
they
come
can
back
go
in.
and visit
They get a
normal
stamp
heaven.
on their hand, and then they lick it and put it onto your hand and you get in. That's how they do it.